What is up, you guys? Teller checking in for UFC Shanghai. Obviously, we're going to have a lot of Asian-based fighters on this card as it's taking place in China. This is something that I enjoy to watch. You guys know that. I love seeing cards take place around the world, and I love to see talent being groomed in all different regions of the world. I find it very exciting, and this card is a perfect example of that. Now, unfortunately, we did lose about 4 fights as the road to UFC had to be postponed. There was about 4 fights that were supposed to be also taking place in this card. Unfortunately, those are postponed. So do note that we only have 10 fights taking place on this card. We're going to start at the first fight, work our way up towards the top. You guys know how we do it. We'll have timestamps and all that. Quick note, I'm going to start recording these videos a little bit more in advance. So I can't tell you how I did on UFC Austin right now, although sometimes I'll get to editing the video after the card takes place. Sometimes I'll edit these as the fights are taking place. So if you look scrolling below, sometimes you'll see the results. But as far as me talking here, how I did, you guys will have to wait for the recap episode, which I always post by Sunday. So check out the recap for UFC Austin. I'm sure it was another profitable event as we've been killing the last quarter of this year. Okay, other than that, hope you guys like the new setup. You guys can expect a lot of new things to start shaking up here at the channel. So with the new year coming up, I got some big things looking forward for the new year coming up. There's some things I'm working on, so stay tuned and you'll start seeing a lot of that. And also a quick note, I am consistently going to be recording these episodes about the Friday before the previous card of the episode that I'm recording. So for example, UFC Austin takes place tomorrow. Okay, I'm recording this Friday before that event. So just so you know, I can't go over how I did the event prior, but as you guys know, we always have the recap episode posted by Sunday, all right, right after the event took place. So you guys can always keep up to date how we did with our official plays. With that all being said, if you don't mind, please smash that like button, as all the YouTubers like to say, right? I'm a YouTuber now. Got to say it just how they all do. Please, if you guys can, smash that like button, smash that subscribe button. Catch me on all my social media. It's scrolling below, specifically IG and Twitter. I appreciate you guys very much. Let's jump into the first fight.
Welcome to the show. This is the MMA fortune teller. Yeah.
The MMA fortune teller.
The teller.
Now, kicking the card off, we have a women's strawweight matchup between 2 Brazilian fighters, Rayanne Amanda and Talita Alencar, who both originally came from Dana White's Contender Series, just at different times. Rayanne Amanda, she fought Denise Gomes a couple seasons ago. She lost that fight, and actually she was outstruck essentially 2-1. She was outstruck 103-55, but you know, I remember that fight playing out a little bit more closer than those stats say. I was just rewatching some of the tape in that fight. I don't necessarily think that stat line shows exactly how that fight went. I think that she showed some toughness in that fight. But besides all that, she's been looking good as of recently. Since that loss, she just defeated Julian DeCourcy, the Invicta atomweight champion. So essentially, right, she's the atomweight champion now. She's on a 3-fight winning streak since that loss, and she went to a decision with Denise Gomes, who has proven to be a very talented fighter. Okay, so I really don't think that her resume is looking that bad as of recently. I know that she took some earlier losses in her career. She's 14-6, but she's just 28 years old, and I think that she has some potential. She's a little undersized for the division. Again, just fighting in the atomweight division over in Invicta, and even came in underweight compared to what she could have came in for that fight, even a pound or lighter than the limit there, I believe she came in. So she's obviously not the biggest fighter. Well, Talita Alencar is a very undersized fighter as well, at just 5'1" with a 58.5-inch reach. She's very small as well. She should be probably fighting in the atomweight division. Of course, there is no atomweight division in the UFC, and these girls want to fight under the greatest MMA promotion that's out there. So, I mean, you can't really blame them. But these are 2 undersized women. I like the matchmaking here. Talita Alencar training over in Deerfield Beach, Florida, where I was born, training at a smaller gym down the road from American Top Team. And she's a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu specialist. She just made her professional debut a couple years ago in the sport of MMA. We saw in her fight on Dana White's Contender Series, when she's not able to go out there and have success with her grappling, that she could be in for some real trouble. All right, that's exactly what went on in her last fight. She did have success early in that fight. She was consistently getting the fight down to the mat, but she wasn't able to get a submission victory. And as the fight went over to the third round, she was completely gassed out, and she was picked apart. And she was 10-8'd in that third round as that fight went to a draw against the very young Stephanie Luciano, who ended up getting a contract there. And she outstruck her 87 to Talita's just 35 strikes. Okay, this is how this fight's going to go down, in my opinion. Talita Alencar, she's 33 years old. I know she's still newer to the sport of MMA, so we'll see her grow a little bit more rapidly than the typical fighter there. You know, she's a little late to the sport, but I don't expect to see so much evolution in her. At least not enough to cut the difference that if she doesn't pull off a sub, or if she can't consistently get takedowns and control them very comfortably down in the mat, if Amanda is able to get back up to her feet, I see Amanda hurting Talita, or at least just overwhelming her with volume. You know, outstriking her and overwhelming her with the volume, snatching rounds with the more damaging blows landed in the round. If Talita's holding her there, not really doing much, if she's not getting that sub, if the fight gets up to the feet for a couple minutes and Amanda just bombards her with a bunch of pitter-patter type of strikes, we could see rounds go her way that way. Or we could see something similar to what just happened in Talita's last fight, where she's completely gassed out as she continuously goes for those takedowns, and we could see Amanda maybe finish her in the third round, which Luciano was very close to doing that in her own right. But we'll also give some props to Alencar, as she did show to be very, very tough and was eating a lot of shots and kept pushing for those takedowns, but wasn't having a lot of success here. So I wouldn't be surprised if we see Talita pull off a submission early on in this fight. But if she doesn't get the sub early on, I think that she could be in some trouble. It's also worth noting that Amanda, in her last fight, late in that fight, she was in a deep armbar, and I liked the way that she fought out of it and was very composed, and then went right back to work and got the W in that fight. So right now, Rayanne Amanda opened up as a -137 favorite, slight favorite on Jazz Sports, and she is now a -145. So we see slight action going her way. And this is a tricky one, though. I'm telling you, I think that's the right way that the action should be going, and I am taking Rayanne Amanda to win this fight. I think that she avoids the sub, and then she'll just be the more complete mixed martial artist. You know, making her pro debut, I believe, in 2015, compared to Alencar just making her debut, I think, in 2021 or so, just a couple of years ago. I think that Amanda is going to be the more proven and more mature mixed martial artist here. So I think it's the right side to be on. Just keep in mind that Alencar is a world-class jiu-jitsu player. And, if she sets it up right, if she starts to get comfortable in the cage and she sets it up right, she could easily lock a submission victory in. So just note that, all right? But we are on Rayanne Amanda to possibly get a third round TKO in this fight. Second round, third round TKO if the pace is high. In the women's bantamweight division, we have two judo black belts facing off here, and Stephanie Egger taking on Luana Santos. Luana Santos, very young, 23 years old, just made her UFC debut in her last fight, where she was able to get the job done against a fighter in Juliana Miller, a BJJ specialist that really has no business fighting in the UFC. You guys know what Juliana Miller is about. She's a very tough, scrappy fighter, but she is as unpolished as it gets when we're talking about just being a complete mixed martial artist. She's so sloppy on the feet, and she was eventually cracked with the shot. She was broken down in the feet. I do like the way that Luana Santos opened up on her with her striking, was able to get that finish. But let me be very clear. The striking that Luana was showcasing was not that impressive. She was kind of flailing these boxing shots from way out east and west. I wasn't overly impressed like she's some type of sharpshooter. I think that she just took advantage of an inadequate opponent. And I think that Stephanie Egger would finish Miller as well. So let me say that right now. Stephanie Egger, I think that she has some edges coming into this fight, right? She's 35 years old. I don't think that age, even though it's getting up there, I don't think that's a disadvantage. I think that she's a very mature fighter right now. I would take that 35-year-old age over the very young and green 23-year-old and Luana, especially as Luana just said that she had extreme anxiety coming into her last fight. She was very nervous the day of, and that could be an issue when she actually faces off against an opponent that gives her some pushback, right? And again, let me not go in on Juliana Miller there. I'm very interested to see how they face off with each other in the clinch. I would love to see one of them try to pull off some judo throws on each other. I would like to see who gets the better of those exchanges. But all in all, Stephanie Egger, I think that she might have a little bit more pop on her shots. If you remember when she finished, was it Shayna Young? I think it was early on in her UFC career. She showcased that she has some power. I know it was down to the mat too with the ground and pound, but she showed to land some heavy shots. I think she'll have more pop and just any variety of strikes that she throws out there. Submitted Jessica Rose Clark as well. She has a submission there in the UFC. Submitted Alencar Perez, 2 submissions in the octagon. I think that Alencar Perez is showing to be a pretty tough fighter, so that's a respectable win. You take a look at her losses. She lost to Tracy Cortez and Mayra Bueno Silva. Bueno Silva about to be fighting for the belt. Tracy Cortez, a very, very tough outing. Now, the Irene Alexeva fight, she got caught in that knee bar, right? So it was what it was. I think that she's going to be very, very hungry coming into this fight. And, we're going to get to the betting line here in 1 second, but I think there's a lot of things pointing towards Egger's way. I think that she's a very professional fighter. She doesn't leave any stone unturned. Just needs to, continue to polish some things up, but she's putting in the work. And look, we take a look at the betting line. She's a plus 164 right now on Jazz Sports, and line hasn't moved as of right now. Let's see what else we could see here. But over on Bovada, she opened as a plus 162, and we see slight movement going towards her way as she's now a plus 159. That's what I would expect, because I didn't expect this line to be where it is. I've watched early film on Luana Santos as well. Again, she has good volume. Her grappling, I would probably say, is her strong suit. Again, she has the black belt in judo. She has a respectable belt in Brazilian jiu-jitsu. She has those skills, so she's a good grappler. We've seen her go out there and take advantage of girls early on in her career with the grappling. But I think Stephanie Egger can potentially use her solid hips to keep the fight standing. I can maybe see her landing some big shots, and I could see this fight playing out very closely. I have this fight capped very closely, but you're going to throw a line out there like that, that's going to force me to pick Stephanie Egger here and obviously say there's more value on the Egger line. Not interested in that Luana Santos line where it is at minus 204. We see it as high as a minus 204. I would not pay 2-1 odds on Luana Santos here. So yes, a close fight. Maybe Luana Santos goes out there and shows more growth in her game as she's so young. But right now, I don't know why you'd be taking a risk on that at this type of line. So give me Stephanie Egger via decision in a closely contested match. But I think that Egger rises to the occasion here. Also note, she's never lost in consecutive fights. Anytime she's taken an L as a professional, she's always bounced back with a nice solid W. I think she does that here once again, potentially. In the welterweight division, we have Song Kenan representing China, taking on Kevin Jousset. Now, Kevin Jousset looked very impressive in his UFC debut, representing Team City Kickboxing. You guys know they need some new blood to really represent their team, with Israel Adesanya to taking a little hiatus from the sport. Alexander Volkanovski, one of the all-time greats, but coming off a devastating loss. I know he has a big fight coming up, but he's getting up there in age as well. You want to see that fight team start to groom some new fighters in the octagon for that gym to maintain the respect that it deserves. I like the work that they put in over there. Kevin Jousset is that guy to represent them. Of course, Carlos Olberg as well. They're the two fighters that are going to start to really represent that team on the major stage down the line. Kevin Jousset, very big for the division. I love the frame that he has in this division. You take a look here, he's going to have about a 4-inch reach advantage over the rangy fighter in himself and Song Kenan. Kevin Jousset getting his first ever submission victory in his UFC debut, where he fought Kiefer Crosby, a fighter that I'm quite fond of. I like Kiefer. I think he's going to get another opportunity to fight in the octagon too, so I'm happy about that. But there he is, Jousset. Jousset getting his first ever submission victory. You guys know it was an official play for me on that huge card, one of my favorite cards of the year, where Strickland went out there and snatched the middleweight championship, and it was a very profitable night. But Jousset, he is a very polished striker, as to be expected. But he's working on his overall skill set, and I think that he's just a dangerous addition to this division. I think that he will prove to be a legit UFC fighter. He's 30 years old. He's not a spring chicken with just 11 pro fights, but still, he's creeping into the prime age of himself, but still has a lot of work as far as his mixed martial arts game goes. He still has a lot of work to put in there, but I think he's going to do okay, like I said. Now, Kenan is a dangerous fighter. He's coming off a much-needed victory where he edged out Rolando Bedoya. Interestingly enough, I don't know if you guys remember this, he was outstruck by 32 strikes, 37 strikes. He was actually outstruck. That was a closely contested match, but he did land the more impactful shots throughout that fight, I would say. Close fight there. Rolando Bedoya, a fighter that really gained a lot of respect just by making a UFC debut fight against... name slipping my mind right now. A very talented fighter, where he was able to go to a split decision, I believe it was, against KS Williams. So he got a lot of respect there, but in all reality, Bedoya hasn't really proven that much. So, he edges him out there. Before that, this is what we got to talk about here. Before that, he was knocked out 2 times in a row against Ian Gary. Speak of the devil, Ian Gary, all over social media. You guys know what I think of him, but he's a talented fighter. I will say that much. Was finished by Ian Gary, and he was finished by Max Griffin. Was hit with a devastating knockout shot by Max Griffin there with Max showcasing some boxing skills. There's no question that Song has showed to have some deficiencies defensively. I think that Jousset is very live to land a big shot in this fight. Okay, I know that he doesn't have an overwhelming amount of finishes, just 4 knockouts, which, in 9 victories, just under half of his victories, but he hasn't really shown to be this crazy knockout artist, but he's a very polished striker. If Kenan makes one mistake out there, do not be surprised if Jousset lands a big shot and finishes him here. I'm telling you guys that now. I'm going to take Kevin Jousset to get a TKO finish here in the second round, first or second round. I'm going to say in the early portion of this fight. That's the route I'm going. Kenan, he's a very fluid fighter. He might seem a little quicker out there as the fight starts off and whatnot. He has good movement and whatnot. Kevin Jousset a little bit more stoic, but Kevin knows what he's doing out there. I like Kevin Jousset. I like him to get the job done here. As I said, let's go take a look at the betting line where we will see Kevin Jousset is a minus 179 favorite right now, open as a minus 174. So slight action coming on him with this fight. At the very preliminary stages of this fight, right? We're still a little bit out from this fight, and we see some early action coming in on Jousset. Wouldn't be surprised if we see him creep up to as high as a minus 200 favorite, 210 favorite. I think we'll see action continue to come in on him. I think people are going to like what they see from him. They're going to like the size and just the fine-tuned skills that he has. So, yes, I like Kevin Jousset. I would caution you to be late on that line if it blows up too much, but anything 180 down, what you're seeing now, 185 and down, I'm not necessarily opposed to it. I think he goes out there and puts in some work. In the flyweight division, we have Tatsuro Taira taking on Carlos Hernandez. Taira, just 23 years old. You guys know he's one of my favorite fighters in the game right now. I've been very excited to see how his career is progressing. Now, I find it very interesting that he still doesn't have a rank next to his name, as he now has, I believe, 4 victories in the UFC, right? Yes, he does. 4 victories in the UFC, finishing half of them. And, you got guys that already have ranks next to their names, like Steve Erceg. Steve Erceg now ranked 13th in the division. He just being 2-0, having half the amount of victories in the UFC compared to Taira. I'm a little confused on that, but you do understand that Taira is going to have a rank next to his name most likely after he gets the victory here over Carlos Hernandez. Carlos Hernandez, a meat and potato type of fighter. He's pretty good everywhere. And although he doesn't have any knockouts technically on his resume, we understand that in his last fight, he should have had that TKO victory. If you guys remember, against Denise Bondar, he looked very good in that fight, stopped Bondar, but then the ref said there was a clash of heads. It was a kind of like an inadvertent headbutt type of situation. They go to the judges' scorecards, and then he still gets the job done. But he did finish Bondar essentially. He looked good in that fight. Before that, he was submitted against Allan Nascimento. Nascimento is an underrated fighter, and he got caught in a rear naked choke there. You keep an eye on that submission loss there, because I'll tell you a fighter that is very live to submit anyone that he faces off against, and that is Tatsuro Taira. I'm very high on his BJJ. I love the fact that he is a very patient and cerebral fighter. Everybody likes to see fighters go out there, throw caution to the wind and just go out there head hunting and whatnot. And I like that as well. I enjoy that as well. But I do occasionally like to see a fighter that is just very cerebral and fine-tuned and fights a patient fight, like Taira does. He sets things up very, very nicely. And when you have action on him, these are the fighters that are very underrated to have action on. Although the lines next to his name have been very high, but just understand moving forward, if you can catch a good line on him, a fighter that is very patient, cautious, and cerebral, very defensively sound. He's not making too many errors in there, right? When you have money on a fighter like that, for example, when he goes in and he's the superior fighter, we know that he is the more technically and skillful superior fighter. He's not leaving a lot of windows for that upset to happen. He's not there looking to trade and take a lot of shots, right? He's gonna come through when he's facing off against a guy that he's the superior fighter. So just understand that that's kind of his style. He sets things up nicely, and he does everything very well. He's a phenomenal striker from the outside, great BJJ, great takedowns. I'm very high in him, and I cannot wait to see him face off with some of the better talent in the division. So I think you guys know which way I'm going. And also, I do want to note, I had a cool little post on IG at MMA Fortune Teller _. And I'll just clarify. I said dark horses to become the champion in each division. All right. So I have him as my dark horse for the flyweight division. What I meant by dark horse is just that, like, people don't necessarily see these guys being the champion right now. I understand that all the guys I listed have the potential to be champions, but, people don't necessarily have him penciled in as the future champ. So just, he has to put in a lot more work, but I could see it happening. You got guys like Nurmagomedov, Movsar Evlovoyov is a guy I could see potentially becoming the champion in his division, in the featherweight division. Maybe not the most likely, but, you got killers at the top of the division. But you know what I'm saying? These are guys that could be champions. Arman Sarukian, which we'll see how that aged, because, again, he just fought, or he's fighting tomorrow, but, so you guys can go check that post out and give me your thoughts on that. But back to this fight, I obviously have Tatsuro Taira to win this fight. I think he's going to pull off a submission. I got him sinking in a rear naked choke. I think he gets on the back of Hernandez and he sinks it in. 23 years old. He's just going to look better and better and better. Wait till he's 28 years old. He's going to be a phenom in the UFC. And Carlos Hernandez is a tough dude, but like I said, Taira will avoid getting hit by a shot that shakes things up. I think that he'll fight an intelligent fight and he will get the job done. He's a -475 on my bookie. He's a big time favorite, which is something that we've consistently seen every time he's fought in the UFC. He's been a big favorite, and he gets the job done here, gets the finish. Maybe you want to throw it in a 2-team parlay or a 3-team parlay for you degenerates. I think he's going to get the job done. So if you're looking for something like that, I think he does go out here and handle business comfortably. I think he controls Hernandez with the grappling and even will outland him on the feet. He'll jab him from the outside, strike from the outside, land some nice heavy calf kicks and whatnot. Taira is a stud, and I got him winning this fight by decision. Up-and-coming talent working its way into the UFC's flyweight division here. Hyun Song Park, the victor of the road to UFC's flyweight bracket, had the rear naked choke victory there. Looked very good. He's taking on Shannon Ross. Shannon Ross, a once respected name in the division, really, if you think about it, especially from the Aussie fight scene. He was a respected name. Before he started taking all these recent L's, his record was much more respectable. He's coming off 3 losses in a row, and he's been getting knocked out every time that he steps into the cage. Had an earlier loss against Steve Urseg where he was submitted. That loss doesn't look that bad these days. But the chin, it most likely is gone, okay? And this fight could be a little bit of an issue for him because Park pushes a very high pace, and it's only going to take one shot to put him out. Or it might take a couple shots, but either way, you could very realistically see him getting put out. And I would say the beginning of his demise was that fight on Dana White's Contender Series against Vinicius Salvador, a fight that if he fought a little bit more intelligently, he could have easily won. He was taking the fight over, should have went back to his grappling more so and slowed the pace down. Instead, wanted to put on an entertaining, barn-burning type of fight, and he was cracked with the shot. And then after that, he gets finished in his next 2 fights in the UFC against Klidson Rodriguez. He's a killer. And then Jesus Aguilar, a tough fighter, but you shouldn't be going out there getting starts within 17 seconds against Aguilar. So his stock is down in a major way. He's 34 years old. We're going to get to the betting line here in a second, but yes, there's not a lot of faith in Shannon Ross surviving this fight, I would say, let alone getting a W. Now, as we get over to the betting line here in a second, which we'll jump back over here, but I just want to show you what we're talking about. Hyun Sung Park opened as a minus 550 on my bookies, now minus 500. Okay, so he's a huge favorite. All right, so when we're analyzing this line, if Shannon Ross can avoid being finished and just have an opportunity to showcase his overall skill set, if he fights more of an intelligent fight compared to what we've seen from him recently, he has the experience in his back pocket, and he does bring some things to the table. And you could argue that he is maybe the most complete or most proven fighter that we're going to see Park facing off throughout his career. But then again, you just have to take into consideration that this isn't the same Ross from back in the day. If this fight was taking place 4 years ago, we'd be talking about this fight completely different. But you guys know the name of the game, man. Time changes everything with these fighters. And right now, I just don't understand how anybody has much faith in Ross. Now, if you're looking for a big time dog, to potentially bring some good money back, if you're catching him, at plus 380, which you see action coming in on him a little bit, you can catch him at plus 371 right now, still somewhere in that range. You're getting a lot of value. It's a flyweight fight. We're a little bit less likely to see those types of finishes, but the way that Shannon Ross has been looking, 3 knockout losses in a row, I do believe that he's going to be finished in this fight. I think he's going to be TKO'd on the feet. Maybe even just flatline KO'd. I just think that Park pushes the pace too much. He's very well-rounded. I don't think that Ross will be able to resort to his grappling. I think that Park can keep the fight standing. Again, Park is a very well-rounded fighter. 4 subs, 3 knockouts, but the knockout is what is most likely going to come, man. This guy puts a lot of volume out there, and this will probably be the last we see of Ross. So, if you guys are a little sentimental with those Shannon Ross, make sure you give him a proper goodbye as he's scraped up from the canvas this upcoming Saturday. Now, this should be one of the more fun fights on the card, if you ask me, in the lightweight division. Nasrat Haqparast versus Jamie Mullarkey. Both these fighters haven't even cracked their 30s yet, and they both have a good amount of experience in the octagon. That's why I think this is a huge fight, because the winner of this really takes some momentum from it. They just have so much more time left in their UFC careers, hopefully, and they want to start building up that win streak to work their way towards the top 15. Now, Nasrat Haqparast is a fighter that was really, really respected not too long ago. He was still so young, but if you remember, going into the Drew Dober fight, he was a pretty hefty favorite. Dober was the dog in that fight. Now, Dober knocked him out there. And I think the reason why he was coming into that fight with a lot of respect, he was on a 3-fight winning streak. He was very young. He took a lot of the hype away from Mark Diakase. If you remember, Mark Diakase had a lot of hype back in 2018, and he took that away from him. But it was shut down a little bit by Dober. A respectable win against Rafa Garcia before losing to 2 big names, and again, bouncing back with 2 victories. Something that Nasrat does very well that I think will pay dividends in this fight is that he's very, very active with the striking and very accurate. Jamie Mullarkey has some good power. We've seen Mullarkey go out there and starch dudes before. And I think his power could shake things up. Like I said, we've seen Nasrat knocked out before. We've seen Mullarkey go out there and knock guys out like Devontae Smith, Kama Worthy. He was on a nice little 2-fight win streak at that point in time back in 2021, 2 big-time knockouts. And, then things really took a turn for the worse, got knocked out by Jalen Turner. The vast majority of fight fans thought that he should have lost that Michael Johnson fight. I think he won a split decision fight there. And then he goes out there, fights this young kid, Francisco Prado, who had no grappling and just used his wrestling to just sneak out a boring W. Then he gets knocked out against Naimov after that. And then the much-needed rebound victory over John McDessie. So, yeah, Mullarkey's been a little bit all over the place, and I would say that he's been going through some turbulence. And, we'll circle back to what I said here. I think the volume of Nasrat on the feet will be the difference in this fight as it goes to the judges' scorecards. Now, if we see somebody land a big shot that shakes things up, there's a variety of ways things can go. I think that Mullarkey could shake things up if he goes back to his roots and really, fights with a chip on his shoulder. But if we don't see a knockout, we see this go to the judges' scorecards, Nasrat will be the fighter that I think will be a step ahead, strike to strike, as we go through this fight. Mullarkey will not be able to pull off that type of Mullarkey in the cage, trying to just stifle his opponent with the boring wrestling. Nasrat will be up to par, stuffing those takedowns. He showcased a 78% takedown defensive rate throughout the UFC. He's a well-rounded fighter. I like Nasrat here. I think that he just checks off a lot more boxes than Mullarkey. He's had those big knockout victories, but I think that he's kind of proven to be a little bit of a paper tiger, I would say. You know what I mean? He's just not as good as we thought he potentially could have been. And I like Nasrat here. And we'll go take a look at the betting line. On my bookie, Nasrat opened as a -210. He's now -220. So opening up as over a 2-1 favorite and still having the action go his way. I understand it. I get it. Okay. I think when you break down tape on these two guys, I think that it points towards Nasrat's way. He reminds me of Kelvin Gastelum a little bit. Again, can't talk about how Kelvin performed this weekend because recording this Friday. But what do you guys? I don't know. You guys may get a kick out of that. You guys know how Kelvin performed. But regardless of how he performed, we always know that Kelvin is a fighter that always is he's tough and he shows up. So whatever. Just he reminds me of him a little bit with the volume on the feet and whatnot. I like Nasrat Haqparast to win a decision here, being a step ahead as this fight takes place on the feet. Give me a UD, a unanimous decision for Nasrat Haqparast. So even though Sumudaerji has taken some recent losses, still a lot of respect put on his name as he's the number 12th ranked flyweight fighter. He's taken on Nascimento, a fighter that can very realistically have a number next to his name. After this fight takes place and just in the near future in general, we know that Nascimento is a very polished grappler. He's a very polished fighter in general, doesn't look to make a lot of mistakes in the cage, looks to go out there and just get the job done, mostly with his grappling, right? Setting up his grappling and using his BJJ. Sumudaerji is an electrifying striker, fights out of the southpaw stance. He's very rangy, very, very quick twitched. And if you're slipping there, he will crack you. He will finish you up, right? He's had some big knockout victories in the cage before. Now he is coming off a crazy loss. We'll talk about that in a second. But knocked out Malcolm Gordon and landed some big shots on André Sukumtat and Zaruk Adashev. Landed very big shots in both of those fights. I mean, his striking is dangerous. And I do believe that if he can keep this fight standing, that there's potential for him to have those moments to land those big shots. As we saw in the Matt Schnell fight, also, he landed a lot of big shots. They went to war. At the very end of the day, though, Matt Schnell gets that finish. I mean, blood everywhere. What an epic fight that was. Gets the submission, but, Matt Schnell landing big shots there as well. And in that fight, Sue threw caution to the wind and was a little reckless out there. And that is something that worries me in a matchup like this because, as I said, Allan Nascimento is not the type of fighter to make those types of mistakes. And I think he's going to look to set up his grappling. And I could see Sue being subbed here. In fact, that's what I most likely see happening. I believe that Nascimento will set up a submission. I like the fact that Sumudaerji is getting in work over at Team Alpha Male, training with the headliner himself here, and Yadong Song. I mean, that's obviously going to do wonders for him here. I think he'll be very fine-tuned and ready to go. But at the end of the day, I don't know if that's going to be enough to close the gap on a very polished Allan Nascimento. And Allan, not to be forgotten as one of the fighters that's really been holding the flag for shoot box, which there's been just so many fighters coming out of there, putting in work, all led by Charles Oliveira, Thomas Almeida back in the day. I mean, he's long forgotten, but you got a lot of young fighters that have been working their way into the UFC. Really, Elvis Brenner, an absolute stud, right? Elvis Brenner. You got fighters like Daniel Santos, Willie Cat, who's been putting in work. Allan Nascimento, another fighter representing that flag very well. So let me just cut to the chase here. I think Allan Nascimento will be more cerebral, more technically sound defensively. I think he avoids the danger. I think that he eventually sets up a takedown where he works his BJJ. We just saw him really have some solid success against Jake Hadley, controlling him down on the mat. And Jake Hadley's a very polished grappler. Used his size and just his technical skills to just nullify him and hold him down there. And then he's coming off that submission victory over Carlos Hernandez, who we just spoke about a little bit earlier. Now, his lone loss was in his UFC debut against Tagar Ulanbekov, the Dagestani flyweight fighter who gets a lot of respect. That fight was very close. And in fact, a lot of people thought Allan Nascimento should have potentially got the nod there. All right, and that fight took place over in Abu Dhabi. Tagar had the crowd behind him and all that and got the nod. But Allan Nascimento put his name in the map back then, and I think he gets another victory here. We most likely see a rank next to his name, and we'll see Sue drop that rank there. As he was coming off a devastating loss also, but still getting the respect with the number. Allan Nascimento snags that. Allan Nascimento opened as a -350 on my bookies, now -290. And I understand why that line's dipping, because if he doesn't have success with the grappling, if he can't consistently get this fight down to the mat, I do believe that Sue will get the better of those striking exchanges. He's a powerful striker. He can potentially land a finishing blow. But again, all in all, I think Allan will have success with the takedowns and with the BJJ. But yes, I understand that line is a little high. Minus 350 is a little bit too high for my liking. If you're interested in taking Nascimento in a parlay, you keep an eye on this line. If this line goes down to minus 260, 250, I actually do think that it's a potential parlay piece. I do believe there's some potential there. Allan Nascimento is a very good fighter. He will not leave a lot of room for Sue to land that big shot. So in the flyweight division, we don't see a lot of finishes there. Sue coming off a devastating loss as well, a devastating finish loss. All signs pointing to Allan Nascimento, but don't be touching it in the minus 300s. It's a little bit too high. Sue will have the crowd behind him if the fight plays out closely, and will have the edge in the striking. But give me Allan Nascimento via submission, second round submission. André Muniz looks to dig himself out of a hole here. Does not want to go on a 3-fight losing skid. Has a tough test in front of him in Yong Park. The Korean, the Iron Turtle, is really bringing in a lot of momentum into this fight, coming off quite a few finishes. Just submitted Albert Duryov, submitted Dennis Tiolinen, submitted Joseph Holmes, outpointed the very tough Eric Anders, dating back to his last loss, which was against Gregory Rodriguez. No shame in that loss. You guys know Rodriguez always goes out there and looks to put in work, win or loss. He's a very talented fighter. And then before that, victories over Tefan and Chukwi. That was a big fight for the Iron Turtle at the time, because he was showing evolution in his game. We know he's a very sharp boxer, but he was changing levels in that fight, using his wrestling, and just was the superior fighter there. A couple other victories here in between the debut loss, the UFC debut fight where he lost. And let's not overlook the Marc-Andre Barriot victory. Marc-Andre is a very talented fighter. Now, the Anthony Hernandez fight, which we all know, Hernandez is a stud. Park was winning that fight. He was en route to winning a decision in that fight before he did get caught in a sub late in the second round. And then also, a very... I shouldn't say that, but a loss to Shavkat Rakhmonov. There's no shame in that loss. You guys know Shavkat's the truth. He was submitted there. So if you take a look at those two submission losses against high caliber opponents, they were early in his career, and he's obviously worked on that aspect of his game extensively since then. But that is the threat here. Muniz is going to have some success getting this fight down to the mat and trying to pull off a sub. I believe that, because if he struggles to get this fight down to the mat and wants to go tit for tat with the Iron Turtle, I think that Park is going to outstrike him. I'm very high in the boxing skills and the fluidity and the foot movement of Park. I think he's a very talented striker. He's a very precise striker, and he will get the better of Muniz there. And I'll be honest with you guys. Muniz, a fighter that I was very high on in the past, I think that he is kind of hitting a roadblock right now in his career. Something's going on with him. He did not look good against Paul Craig. Absolutely broke down in that fight. Was TKO'd down on the mat by Paul Craig. Was not a good look for him. That's in his wheelhouse down on the mat. Submitted by Brendan Allen as well, which, to see Muniz go out there and get submitted, we understand how talented Allen is, as he's talk about dark horses to become a champion. But still, the way that he's gone out there and lost those two fights, something doesn't look good with him, and I could easily see Park breaking him down. Maybe this fight does go down to the mat, and I can still see Park avoiding the submission and maybe just ground and pounding Muniz and finishing him up just the way Craig did. So I am on John Young Park to get the job done here. I think he finishes this fight. I know I'm calling a lot of finishes, but give me another finish here. I got a TKO victory for Park. It could potentially be on the feet. It might go down to the mat where he then finishes him there. But I sense that TKO victory. And let's take a look at the betting line here, as Park is up to a minus 250 favorite right now on my bookie. Opened as a 260, touched 280, dipped all the way back to a 240. He's settling as a 250. On some other books, I see him right around 220, 230. He's over a 2-1 favorite, and I could see why. I see why people have doubts right now in regards to Muniz. Doesn't seem to be all there, and to run into a guy like Park right now with all the momentum he has, with the crowd behind him and all that, fighting on that side of planet Earth, it's not going to be a good night for Muniz, in my opinion. Now, you could potentially want to target Muniz, see if you can get a good line, maybe on a submission prop. For those of you guys that are looking for something on the other side, we could potentially see a sub locked up, but I'm not banking on it, man. I think that Park handles business, pumps the jab, and just controls this fight. We got the co-headliner, two ranked light heavyweight fighters, Anthony Lionheart Smith taking on Khalil Rountree. Number 8, Anthony Smith. Number 11, Khalil Rountree. Both these fighters not far apart in age, but in my opinion, they are both at very different stages of their pro careers here. Anthony Smith, just 2 years older at 35, but Anthony Smith is a fighter that now has, let's do the math here quickly. He's a fighter that has 55 professional fights. Well, Khalil Rountree has 18 professional fights, including the no contest there. Khalil Rountree is a fighter that is really coming into his prime. I think there's no question about that. Even though we know that he just took a loss to Marcin Prachnio not too long ago, he's a fighter that in years past, if you take a look at some of his more tough losses, he's a fighter that mentally broke down, right? He had a lot of fights where he was finished quickly. Ian Cutelaba finished him in the first round. Johnny Walker, remember, he finished him in the clinch, I believe, in the first round. Tyson Pedro submitted him in the first round. He was submitted by Corey Hendricks on The Ultimate Fighter. He was a fighter that just was a little bit mentally weak, in my opinion. And, if he's able to consistently figure that out when he goes into the cage, we know how dangerous he is offensively. When you think about some of the worst beatdowns that we've ever seen in the cage, you're talking about Khalil Rountree. You're mentioning his name when you remember what he did to Carl Robertson. Absolutely beat him down. There was a couple other fights early on in his career where he really put a beat down on some of these dudes. I think it was the John Stansberry fight. It might have been, or actually, I'm trying to remember. It might have been the Mo Doris fight. I'm sorry, that's the fight, the Mo fight, where he really just beat the crap out of him. He's had some very impressive performances. You remember when he showed up and fought Eric Anders, and all of a sudden had this real heavy Muay Thai type style. He was training over in Thailand, I believe, and picked Eric Anders apart. Just looked so fluid, and he's so quick with his striking. He's a very fun fighter to watch, and I put a lot of respect on his name, but I do have some question marks in regard to his mental game at times. Anthony Smith is a fighter that is very mentally tough. He'll take an absolute beating. We've seen him in the cage with his teeth falling out of his face, and he's still in there looking to try to bring the fight. He's coming off a performance where he really had to dig deep against Ryan Spann. That was a fight that I had official action on him. I got him at underdog odds. Somehow he was the underdog against Ryan Spann when he already had a victory over him. I'll take that dog value all day. I know it was a very close fight and Spann landed the bigger shots, but keep in mind Anthony Smith outstruck him almost by 32 total strikes there. So, just keep that in mind. I thought Anthony Smith did enough to edge that fight out. Anthony Smith, I love the work that he's been doing, as a commentator. I think he's a good dude. I know some of you guys think I've been a little harsh on him at times based on what happened to him in his home with his family. He had an intruder come in and somehow he's mounted this guy, with the butcher knife that his mother-in-law gave him. And I don't know, let me not go too much into that, but I would say sometimes Anthony Smith just doesn't have that killer instinct, and he should, but he's a great fighter. And, Anthony Smith, he's definitely on the back end of the road, okay? And I think he's going to run into some trouble here. I think that Khalil Rountree is going to land some big shots on him. I think Anthony Smith's going to be a little bit too slow and sluggish for the very quick Khalil Rountree. Now, if Anthony Smith can somehow drag this fight into the deep waters and maybe have some success getting this fight down to the mat, there's potential for him to keep this competitive. But I'm going to be clear. I think Khalil Rountree is going to enter this fight very grounded, and we're going to see that same old recent, just dangerous and sharp Khalil Rountree, who's knocking out guys like Chris Daukaus, beating Carl Robertson up, hyperextending Modestas Bukauskas' leg. And I think it'll be more of that version compared to the fighter that's losing a decision to Marcin Prachnio. And he looked good in the Jacoby fight as well. But I will say, I thought that Jacoby edged that fight, as did the vast majority of MMA media and fight fans. So run the numbers back on that fight. Jacoby outstruck him, and I believe Jacoby won rounds 1 and 2. So that was a bad decision, but it was a close fight, and Jacoby is a stud. And I just think that Anthony Smith is over the hump, and Khalil Rountree is going to land on him. Anthony Smith has been very vulnerable to being landed heavily on the feet, okay? So Khalil Rountree has been looking so sharp on the feet, he's going to land. We're going to see a bloodied up Anthony Smith. I got Khalil Rountree getting the finish in this fight. Another finish. I'm calling another finish here. Let's go take a look at the betting line, where we will see Anthony Smith is a plus 185 dog on my bookie. No movement at the moment. Let me see what else we could find here on Jazz Sports. He opened as a plus 201. We have some slight action coming in on Anthony Smith. But again, he's opening up as a hefty dog. So a little movement coming his way. I think it's just based on the way the line opened up at. I wouldn't be surprised if it bounced back a little bit. I think people will feel comfortable taking Khalil Rountree. You might want to look at those inside the distance and KO props. I'm sensing a finish here. Don't reach too heavy on the lines, but you wait on that line. Maybe it continues to come down on Khalil. As again, so Khalil opened as a 250. He's now A-minus 240 on Bovada. Maybe you can catch Khalil at a 220 line, 210 line. That'd be great in my opinion. And again, he's a little bit of a head case, but Anthony Smith is looking sluggish out there, man. I know I capitalized on those dog odds against Ryan Spann, like I mentioned, but I would be lying to you guys if I wasn't telling you the truth that I was very nervous and thought at one point in time he was going to be done in that fight anyway. So Khalil Rountree is sharp right now. Give me Khalil. Hey guys, real quick, just want to throw this out there. I haven't put one of these videos out here in a minute. If any of you guys are looking for a new sports book, you guys know I mess around with Bovada.lv, and if you sign up through my referral link, you're going to get a big time added bonus to your account, and you will also get 2 fight cards for my official plays. You'll get 2 packages for my official plays if you sign up through my referral link, where we've been killing it this whole second half, realistically at this point, the second half, but specifically been murdering the last quarter of this calendar year. I highly recommend that you sign up to Bovada.lv, target the plays I give you, and you guys will make out well. Reach out to me through email, Instagram, or Twitter. Shoot me a message, and I will get you that referral link, and we'll get you all signed up. So I'm kind of cheesing right now because I kid you not, I'm going back and forth with Bobby Green on Instagram, and he's calling me a punk and whatnot. It's kind of funny. I'm going to put the video up on Instagram as we're filming this again Friday. So if you check my IG, you'll see what Bobby Green just sent me. He sent me a video of him laying in the bed, kind of chirping at the teller. He didn't like the post that I did in my story. I tagged him in it, but I was kind of calling it for what it was as far as the incident with him and Arman Sarukian. All right, because he dropped the ball in a major way. You never let a guy get right up in your business like that, and then you don't just lackadaisically go to push him like that and turn your head to the side. I mean, he's lucky he didn't get slept by Arman Sarukian, to be honest. You don't handle business like that. If someone's coming at you in a threatening manner, you need to have a little bit of space. You need to be postured, ready to throw a nasty counter as soon as they reach for your neck and whatnot. I don't think Bobby handled that situation properly, and I kind of just called it as I saw it. And Bobby's funny. He sent me a video. I'm going to post it on IG. But we go to the main event now. We're talking some ranked bantamweight action. Song Yadong taking on Chris Gutierrez. Now, this is a funny fight here, an interesting fight, because the numbers do not describe this fight as it actually is. Check this out. I found this pretty interesting. Chris Gutierrez landing more than Song Yadong has in the octagon at a 5.04 per minute marker, and while Song Yadong landing at 4.61 strikes per minute. And more importantly, Chris Gutierrez only absorbing 2.73 strikes per minute compared to Song's 3.77. The numbers point towards Chris Gutierrez's direction, but when you break down film on these two fighters, you understand these guys are moving on very different wavelengths. First off, you take a look at the level of competition. Obviously, Song Yadong has been fighting higher level opponents, as Chris Gutierrez just comes off a decision victory over Haley Alatang, knocked out a very old Frankie Edgar, knocked out Dana Baccarel, went to a split decision with Felipe Coleres, defeated Andre Ewell, Vince Morales, Geraldo de Freitas. I mean, you guys understand what we're talking about here. You take a look at Song Yadong, let alone how amazing he's looked in the cage, but victories over Ricky Simone, Marlon Moraes, Julio Arce, Casey Kenny, Marlon Chito Vera. I mean, these are legitimate opponents, okay? And you could also mention Vince Morales, just as we mentioned, for Chris Gutierrez. But listen, just dissect the film. Song Yadong is extremely quick with his movement. He's extremely technical. He's only 25 years old, which makes it even more scarier because he's just going to look better and better, and he's going to completely, just round out his game as he creeps up to 28, 29. I had that post on IG about dark horses or guys that are just kind of a couple steps away from holding the championship belt that I think could very realistically do that. Throw Song Yadong's name in that hat as well. He's a kid that could easily be a UFC champion in the near future. And I will say this, you take a look at his one recent loss, which was against Corey Sandhagen here. it's kind of interesting because that showcases how good Corey Sandhagen is right now. Corey Sandhagen, you talk about another guy that's creeping up in the belt. The Kyler Phillips fight was a very close one as well. So he lost some close fights. The Cody Stamann draw back in the day, that was in 2019, and you understand how young he was at the time, man. He was 22 years old, I believe, at the time. 21 years old. I mean, he was just such a young kid, and he's going to be way quicker than Chris Gutierrez. I mean, Chris Gutierrez just drops the ball to Pedro Munoz. Nothing but respect towards Pedro Munoz's way, but Munoz is much slower and plotty than Song Yadong is, and Munoz was still able to capitalize there and have success. Both these guys' statures are very similar. I just think that Song Yadong is going to be the aggressor here. He's going to be outpointing Chris Gutierrez every step of the way. Now, Chris Gutierrez has shown to be very tough and durable, and we talked about how he doesn't absorb a lot of damage, so he will be on his bike and he'll be looking to avoid being finished. And I could see him going to a decision here, but I think that Song Yadong is going to he's going to light him up as far as when this fight goes to the judges' scorecards. I don't think it'll even be close. I got it 50-45, possibly even maybe a 50-44. I hope I'm not disrespecting Chris Gutierrez too bad, and maybe he shows up and makes it competitive, but I think Song Yadong's on a whole nother level. But I do think that Chris is very durable. He's only been finished once in his pro career out of 26 professional fights, so it's hard to count him out in that way. And Bobby Green just sends me a DM right now. He says he doesn't want to post a video, which he says he's going to send it to me, another video of the actual incident, because he thinks they'll sue him. Sounds like some BS to me there, but Bobby Green DMing me as I'm filming this. Song Yadong to win a unanimous decision and to creep his way up to be fighting for that belt in the near future. You guys know, we got some things to be handled at the top of this division, but Sean O'Malley and Chito Vera set to take place. You got Marab up there in the mix. You got Corey Sandhagen, Song Yadong. I mean, this division's absolutely stacked. Let's go take a look at the betting line. Song Yadong is a -375 favorite. He's roughly like right under a -400 favorite, a 4-1 favorite. And I just think that he handles business. One thing we should look at real quick, Song Yadong, out of his 7 losses, he has taken 3 knockout losses. That's one thing that you want to be wary of if you're looking to parlay him. Because I feel so confident he wins this fight, but if there's one way he loses this fight, obviously, in my opinion, it's he gets shaken up with a big shot. And you got to date back to 2016, where he was knocked out against Alexei Polpadnikov. And then you can go way back to 2015. He was knocked out. And these are no-name guys that he was knocked out against way back in the day, taking damage very early on in his career. He was very young, green, but he's just so much more polished these days. And we know he's been putting in work with Team Alpha Male as well as bouncing around, but he's so well-rounded, and he will be a major step ahead of Chris Gutierrez. I'm not feeling any value on Chris Gutierrez's dog line. I'm not targeting it. I just think that he's a step ahead, and a potential parlay piece. I don't see why not just try to catch it before it's 430, 440. I know some of you guys probably think that's way too high, but watch how this fight takes place. I'm expecting domination. All right, guys, that's going to wrap up UFC Shanghai. Obviously, we're looking to make it another profitable event. I hope all you guys have a good one out there and profit on this card. Got to leave you guys with some parting words. Check this out. I'm going to throw this message out there for the young bucks. Obviously, I know there's some of you guys listening to this show that are probably, I'm sure there's some teenagers out there. I'm sure there's some young college kids, not really specifically for you old folk, creeping up to your mid-30s like the teller here. I don't know, man. Life goes by quick, and before you know it, you're in your mid-30s. Don't get it twisted. Doesn't mean I'm not enjoying myself to the fullest, but life changes in a major way. And I want to say this to you guys. You guys hear this all the time. I've heard it my whole life, but you've really got to dig into these thoughts, man. When you guys are in college and you're 21, 22, and you're even after you graduate college, you feel like you're old and you got to get into the real world. It's not the case. I mean, get on your business and grind and make sure you're financially stable and all that, but understand that you'll never get those years back, and those are the best years of your life. Make sure you're hanging with the boys. You got that camaraderie. It's not the same when you get older, man. You start to lose a lot of those different friends. You don't have such a large group of friends, right? You kind of keep your close ones around, which is awesome as well. But when you're young, you got a big group of dudes. Enjoy all that camaraderie, clowning and goofing around, and don't be shy to go up and talk to the girl you want to go talk to, man. None of that matters. Don't be shy. Don't overthink stuff. When you get older, you'll look back and you'll laugh about those situations. And just, even if you get denied, enjoy yourself, be safe out there at the same time, be smart, be safe, but push it to the limit. And you know what I'm saying? Really go enjoy the women out there and all that. So that's my message to you guys. If you're in college, go tear it up out there. Don't get caught up studying too much and just being inside. Study, to get your studying done ahead of time, but make sure you're also partying and enjoying those moments, because in a blink of an eye, it's all over and you start getting grays popping up. All right. So I'll tell you guys that much. But listen, that same message I'm telling you for the young bucks, you know, there could be a 50-year-old version of me that's telling me, as I'm in my early 30s and whatnot, you got to enjoy these years as well, because I'm still young, and I'm compared to these older men, right? You always look at different stages of your life, and I'm still moving good. I got my health, and I'm enjoying these years to the max as well. But they're different. All these different segments of your life are different. Make sure you guys are enjoying what segment you're at and not wasting any time out there. All right, guys. On that note, signing out. Teller.
Welcome to the show. This the MMA fortune teller. Yeah.
The MMA fortune teller.
The teller.